Today I'm going to talk about the problems that are created for all of us by living in a society that doesn't talk about grief or death or anything related to it. And I'm aware that some of you will be shrinking away from the screen right now as I say that, because we just simply avoid it. And that's woven into our culture in Britain, partly because the Victorians took the view that if you didn't talk about death, you didn't talk about grief, that somehow that made it go away. And that was then followed on in both world wars about, that British stiff upper lip and keep calm and carry on. And all of those messages have become very internalised in our society. So you may recall as a child if someone had died and he was in the wake or something after the funeral, quite often relatives would try to, and done with good intention, would try to steer children away from whoever was grieving, which gives us the message that actually it's not okay to grieve, and that if you are going to grieve, well, people mustn't be allowed to see that. So we kind of pick up quite a lot of those messages when we're very young children. And then we see it in TV programmes and in films. There's always this idea that if someone's had a loss, that we don't talk about it. We talk about anything else, but not it. And it's done because we don't want to upset people and we don't want to bring up the pain and the hurt, but actually the pain and the hurt is there all the time when someone's had a huge loss. So rather than all skirting round it, it's better to name it and ask that person, how are they? And you may think, well, yeah, that's all very well and good. People have asked me, and I just say I'm fine. And that's the other side of it, is that if people do ask us how we are when we're grieving or dealing with anything difficult, we tend to just say, oh, I'm fine. How are you? Oh, I'm fine too. Without any real communication about, actually, this feels really difficult right now. I work with people that are grieving, and one of the things that horrified me to start with, and I've kind of got used to it now, is that people who have been recently bereaved will say to me, when I was out the other day, a neighbour who, I've known for 30 years crossed the road to avoid me when they saw me coming, and, that's very, very hurtful. But actually it's because that neighbour just doesn't know what to say. And they're frightened of, saying the wrong thing and upsetting us or bringing the pain up or all of that, and so they avoid. Well, let's think about that. The person that's grieving is therefore not only grieving and has lost someone very, very important to them, they've got other people shying away from them at a time when being isolated and being on your own is really, really difficult. So it kind of compounds the problem. So one of the kindest things you can say to somebody who's experienced a loss is, what happened? I've heard about, I heard that your husband's died. What happened? And that gives them kind of permission to start talking about it. And then when they start talking about it, just listen. And that sounds really simple, but actually it's really difficult, because in our culture we have very quick back and forth conversation. So the whole time someone's speaking, we are planning what we're going to say back to them. We're thinking about what we're going to say. And particularly when they're telling us something that is clearly troubling them or is painful, we are planning on saying something that will help them. This is all done with absolute good intention. It's not about that we're being nasty. We're trying to be really kind, but we'll be thinking, what can I say to sort of help? And one of the things that often gets said is, oh, I know how you feel. I remember when my mum died, or whoever. And let's think about that. By starting to speak yourself, you've stopped that person talking about what's happened, and then you offload some of your pain and trauma onto them at a time when they're in a really bad place. Done with good intention, but has the absolute opposite effect. So the really kind thing to do is to just, whatever words feels right for you, but something like, I was so sorry to hear about your husband dying. What happened? And then stay quiet. Let them talk. And stay quiet until they physically stop talking. They actually stop. Because that's not what we do. We always start to cut in before they've finished speaking. And if you do that, you'll probably be the only person that's listened to them. And that will be really, really powerful for them. And at the end, you don't have to have found a solution. You don't have to say, oh, well, at least they're no longer in pain, which is intellectually true, but emotionally barren. It's okay to just say, I've got no idea how hard that must be to deal with that. I've got no idea how you must be feeling, because that's the truth of it. You haven't got any idea. And to give that honest feedback and honest truth to somebody who is in that position, at least they know that you've really listened to them. And that might be, you might be the only person that's given them that kindness. So next time you meet somebody who's either grieving a death or a divorce or moving home or children leaving home, whatever it is that they're clearly suffering a loss about, just ask them what's happened and really, really listen. Because that's one of the most powerful things you can do for that person. Thanks for listening.